Here's William Lane Craig to take the Bible's word about something that doesn't make sense.
What do you say when scholars say that the Romans didn't bury crucified criminals but let them rot on the cross or put them in mass graves?
Well, what I say is that in the Gospels, in Mark's burial account, the Romans do not bury Jesus. They probably would have left him on the cross to be picked to bear by birds or to decay.
The point of crucifixion was to humiliate the victim. Thus, the Romans would not only have not buried him themselves, it's also unlikely that they would have allowed him to be buried.
But he is buried by a member of the Jewish Sanhedrin, the very court that condemned Jesus to death, all of whom, Mark says, voted for Jesus' guilty verdict.
The idea that the crucifixion of Jesus was primarily the fault of the Sanhedrin is also quite strange. The Bible says that because Jesus implied that he was the Son of God, the Jewish high priests believed he was committing blasphemy. However, if he was executed for that reason, it's weird that they would have him crucified, because according to the Bible, that's not the prescribed punishment for blasphemy. Stoning is. Crucifixion was the punishment for sedition. That's the punishment one would expect if Jesus were convicted of trying to rebel against the Roman occupation of Judea. It's not the punishment one would expect for blasphemy, which is the accusation the priests allegedly made. As the New Testament scholar Bart Ehrman says, anyone who is considered to be a troublemaker could be dealt with ruthlessly and swiftly. The governor could order his death, and the order would be immediately carried out. There was no such thing as due process, trial by jury, or the possibility of appeal. Problematic people in problematic times were dealt with by means of swift and decisive justice, usually violent justice. According to our accounts, the trial of Jesus before Pilate was short and to the point. Pilate asked whether it was true that he was the king of the Jews. Almost certainly, this was the actual charge leveled against Jesus. It is multiply attested in numerous independent witnesses, both at the trial itself and as the charge written on the placard that hung with him on the cross. This is the real reason Jesus was condemned. It wasn't for blasphemy, it was because only the Romans could appoint someone to be king, and anyone else who wanted to be king had to rebel against the state. Since that's the case, it seems unlikely that blasphemy was the reason Jesus was crucified. It actually seems more likely the case that he was crucified because he was the leader of an anti-Roman movement. However, after his death, his followers didn't want any trouble from the Romans and also wanted to convert them, so they downplayed that aspect of the early Christian movement. In so doing, they shifted the blame for his crucifixion from Pilate and the Romans to the Jewish priests in the Sanhedrin. The YouTuber Nonstampcollector has a great video satirizing this.
Focus the blame away from Rome and more on the Jewish chief priests and leaders. Emphasize harder that they were pushing for Jesus to be killed, and it wouldn't be hard to make it look like Pilate was actually on Jesus' side.
Wouldn't that kind of be changing the story? If Pilate was friendly, why doesn't the gospel author mention it?
No, it's not really changing the story, it's just giving a slightly different perspective that Romans might like, that's all.
So Joseph of Arimathea just comes out of the blue.
Which makes him seem kind of made up, don't you think?
Rather than have Jesus buried by his friends or his faithful disciples, he's buried by a member of the very court that sentenced him to death, which is quite unexpected. But given Jewish sensibilities, allowing the body of a crucified criminal to remain on the cross over Passover and over the Sabbath would have defiled the land. And therefore, the Jews had to have that body taken down before sundown on Friday, lest the land be defiled.
Well, the land would have been defiled regardless of what date it was.
And so it's very plausible that a member of the Sanhedrin would be delegated, go to Pilate and request the body of Jesus to inter it. And it's very plausible that Pilate would turn it over to the Jews, not wanting to cause trouble during Passover season, especially if Pilate thought Jesus was innocent and unjustly accused, as the Gospels say that he did.
The idea that Pilate allowed Jesus to be buried so as not to foment rebellion seems counterintuitive in light of the very probable scenario that the whole point of the crucifixion was to punish an attempted rebellion in the first place. And the Gospels don't seem to imply that Pilate thought Jesus was innocent of rebellion. If he did, it's odd that the placard mockingly proclaiming him to be king of the Jews would have been placed on his cross.
To everyone who helps me out on Patreon, you're a big help. Thanks so much.